Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to discussion number 3 of the Qur'an Literacy Program 2025. 8 months. You've come so far. Even if you haven't actually read up to that point that you're here, you've come so far and you should congratulate yourself. We're very proud of you, and inshallah, you're also proud of yourself. As always, we have an amazing facilitator, Nadia, who's going to take it from here. And hopefully, we can see more of you as we finish this year off because we're so close now. Okay? Okay, Nadia, it's up to you.
All right, so let's start with our icebreaker question for today. And our icebreaker question, I'm going to give us a minute to think before people share. But if you could meet any one person, past, present, or future, who would you want to meet and why?
Assalamu alaikum.
Like,
I'm Gwen. I'm from San Francisco, and a human person. I would meet Miriam if I could,
and why is that?
because she's so strong. She's such a great role model, and I think I could learn so much from her as a person, you know. And I just have so much respect for her reading, especially the more I read about her in the Quran and her her life. And then, I mean, obviously, a non-human person, I'd like to go to Jannah Firdaus. So, okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Sophia. I'm from Honolulu, calling from Honolulu. Person, I don't know, persons I'd like to meet, or and I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day, but of course, as American, I don't have any Native American blood in my family, but so everybody came to America at some point. But there's not a whole lot known about those people and like why they came. You know what kind of a person would just leave up and leave. You know what was going on with them, or were they in trouble? Were they just adventurous? So I just like to talk to them to see what that was like, what that decision was like, and like what that last night was like before they left to come here.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Let's go to Rabia K.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Rabia, and I'm calling from Orange County, California. One person I think I'd like to meet from the past is my paternal grandmother, my dadi, my father's mom, who passed away when I was very young, so I have no recollection of her. And I would love to really kind of be able to spend time with her and find out a little bit more about the family, stories from the past and why certain things happened, and just get a little bit more family history.
So this question, actually, we're going to come back to at the end of today. So if you didn't get a chance to share, don't worry. The thinking part of it, it's gonna activate some questions for later. Okay, so I wanted to talk when I was pulling questions for today's session, the idea of when we read the Quran, there's things that we read and make sense to us because it is something we have seen, and other things we read that maybe don't make sense to us because we don't have a concept of it. All right, 2230. And it references someone falling down from the sky. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you a minute just to find that verse. The translation I put in the chat is Muhammad Asad. So in this verse, it is talking about the idea of ascribing divinity or godlike status to anything other than God. So it starts with, I'm gonna read from the Quran. Shun then all that God has forbidden, and most of all, the loathsome evil of idolatrous beliefs and practices. And shun every word that is untrue, inclining towards God, turning away from all that is false, without ascribing divine qualities to aught besides him. For he who ascribes divinity to aught but God is like one who is hurtling down from the skies, whereupon the birds carry him off, or the wind blows him away onto a far off place. This is such a specific description in the Quran, and the question posed in the curriculum I thought was right on the nose. The question is, how do you think people during the time of the Quran's revelation, which is 1400 years ago, might have interpreted this image of a person falling down from the skies when they wouldn't have any possible reference? Now we have literal activities of skydivers, right? That when you first get out of the plane, they literally are hurtling down, and then they're kind of carried off by a parachute. So when we read that now, we could actually kind of pull an image. But the question is, how do you think someone, if you were reading this in 1400 years ago, what might you have thought? How might you have interpreted it? What might have been going on in your head?
What I thought about that was I come from the Midwest where maple trees are very they flourish. And what I found myself wondering is what trees are there in Arabia that may have, like maple trees have these little whirligig seeds that in the autumn they fall from trees and they spin down. And I found myself wondering in Arabia, do the date palms or do palm trees have similar kinds of seeds that spin down from the side of the skies or from the tree? So that's what I was thinking about, but that's just me.
Thank you. Anyone want to build on that or share their thought?
It wasn't initially the same thought, but I like how the sister was thinking, what do I know? What have I seen fall from the sky before to create some connectivity? But I thought about it in two ways. One, if I needed to imagine it, I'd have to imagine something that I haven't seen before. So a person walking through a wall, or just to even get into the chain of thought of seeing something that you probably could not have contemplated. But on the other hand, when you think about it beyond the physical form, you physically falling, the idea of falling is this loss of control. It's this uncertainty on what will happen when you get to the end point of where you're going. And in that regard, for me, it directly connects. It's like for you to ascribe something to the Almighty and delve into these spaces that are not correct, you're really leaving yourself without solid ground, and you really won't know what the outcome will be. So it's just some territory you might not want to dabble in.
Go ahead, Eden, and then I'll go to Bayin next.
So, I was thinking about it in terms of metaphor, especially with the birds snatching you or wind blowing you away, kind of just this total lack of groundedness and stability and direction, kind of like Safira was saying, like just the wind will blow you anywhere. You don't have anything to really hold on to anchor you. So that's what it was making me think of.
Thank you. Maeen and then Qadir.
I initially had this vision of if you've ever been into an emotional downward spiral, and the bird part just made me think of vultures and death and how sometimes if you get into a downward spiral, your thinking just takes you to weird places. And so that's kind of what came up for me.
Just to kind of add to what's already been shared, a thought that came to mind was just the concept of being completely untethered and susceptible. Like there's a sense of vulnerability that comes up in this ayat, and that by ascribing what should not be ascribed to Allah, it opens the door to, I think, being susceptible to other thoughts that might be harmful to our spirits. And it's like a slippery slope almost that comes up with this ayat.
There's a comment in the chat from Samira. It says, I imagine people would have regarded that imagery with fear. After all, what natural occasion would make it appear like someone was falling from a great height? But if they had fallen from a mountain, not to speak of falling straight out of the sky. One thought I was having as I was reading through, and before they gave the idea of I was reading it, I got to the part like one who's hurtling down from the sky, and I wonder if I would have thought that's weird, that doesn't make sense, and kind of skipped over it and kind of put it away as something like, this feels a little bit, I don't know what this is talking about. And the reason I think that is there's been times when I've been reading the Quran where I get to something and I think, I don't know what this is referring to, and I wonder if this is correct or not correct, or it doesn't jive with me, really. And sometimes I put that away in my head saying, well, that's uncomfortable to go there. So to me, to think about that might have been someone's reaction back in the day before having, and now we have something that we can very easily attach to. It's nothing even miraculous. It's something that happens on, I mean, everything's miraculous, but it's something that happens on a normal basis. And then it gets me thinking about how many other things are there in the Quran that we don't have the context for now, but actually do describe phenomenon that could happen.
I think that whole discussion underscores the importance of context. And perhaps you as an individual appreciating that things were revealed at a different time and they were revealed to humans, and humans are going to describe things in a human-like manner. Like you can't even contemplate it, if you would imagine there's life force on other galaxies, then the message wouldn't be revealed to them that way, because this wouldn't be, perhaps their atmosphere wouldn't be the same, gravity wouldn't be the same. So a lot of times I feel things in heaven and other things are described in ways that at the time revealed seemed very cool for humans. Like, oh yeah, I like that. And then, on a very basic level, make things like fire. I've always questioned, really, hell and fire, guys? For what flesh would be burning? What nerve endings would you be touching? So it's just a description to help. I'm going to talk to you in baby language because you're a human. You're not currently in your spiritual form, so that you can kind of get it. But then you have to understand that baby language across all time is not the same. And as baby language, this is not divine to your divine self discussion like your ongoing conversation with the Almighty might be, where you don't even need a word to describe. Like you make a movement or you do something, or somebody comes and does something, and that's a direct message. Now try to put that in a little paragraph and send it to a friend and expect them to get it. I feel like it's also it's context. It's humans from whatever time period. Now, I don't mean to be assumptuous that we're more advanced as humans, right? In some ways, you step back thousands of years and we're the babies, but that's just a thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of the Quran is that it is revealed in stages, and the stages is also talking about the development of human beings over time. So it's always still been revealed. So as Nadia was referring to this, that at that particular time, there wasn't anything that they can relate it to. But in our time, we can. And who's to say what it relate to in the future generations? So the Quran is always revealing itself over and over and over again.
And I appreciate what other people had shared too about what they may have attributed it to. They may have attributed to things like a leaf falling and I can kind of picture Gwyn, like a leaf kind of like, oh, you can't see me because of my wait. But hurtling kind of like really, how a leaf kind of turns really quickly as it's falling down and feeling like that. Is anybody on this line? Has anyone done skydiving? Okay, Samira, help us out now with this metaphor. So when and not to put you on the spot. So Samira or anybody who has watched skydiving, somebody else do it or watched it on YouTube. So the question is, well, if you feel comfortable sharing with us your experiences in skydiving, so that we can try to make a connection to this verse through your experience.
Okay. Well, first, let me know if the audio is clear because I was chiming in via chat because it's a little bit loud where I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Skydiving was exhilarating and also pretty frightening. I did it very impromptu. It was pretty spontaneous with my best friend, like the day of. She was with someone who has experience because they were like a stunt person for like media and whatnot. And so she was like, okay, I got an opportunity to do this. I would like to do it with somebody I know even better than this person. You're my best friend. Let's do this together. And you definitely have to brace yourself because they like tell you to count before you jump. And then, it's it's very frightening, but you just have to remind yourself, well, you signed up for this, so like look around and have fun. Like everything is like sort of whooshing past you so quickly. You're like, just immersed in the sky, and like it does cross your mind because they have you sign so many waivers before going up there. Like, this is a no liability to the center because you're doing something very dangerous, and not everybody walks off the same way they got onto the plane. So, you gotta be just aware of that and knowledgeable that it's a risk, but it was great. It was fun. I like saying that I did it because it's sort of a daring feat to say that you
It's one of the two
experienced,
truths
but
and a lie questions you can always use.
oh yes, for sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I can't say that it feels like flying because it's way too fast and not graceful at all, but it's pretty fun.
Talk about a commitment you can't back out. Fatima, have I bungee jumped? I don't remember that I have. Perhaps I blacked it out.
Oh no, I thought you and your sister did it. And you have a video shot of Alia doing it, and you pretend like it's yours because you both are wearing hijab and
Oh, that was jumping off a 40-foot bridge.
oh,
Yes, I
okay.
have.
Close enough.
Into the water below.
Okay.
No, that's a great connection I could make to it. Like, um, so okay, thinking about what Samira said then, what connections can we make from that experience to this verse?
I guess one thing that comes to mind is fear. I think she used, fear as a generalized theme, I think, across what everybody said so far. So that was one thing that I picked up on. I do get concerned about, ascribing partners to Allah. So I do feel like atheism in general has become very popularized. So like the way that, as she was describing skydiving as being exhilarating and something that, people want to do, and like it's just I don't know, for whatever reason my mind just kind of went into the direction of like, just this shift, especially in this generation, to maybe not necessarily ascribe partners, but to leave faith entirely. So I don't know why my brain started just going that direction, but I mean, but fear, I would say, was, the first thing that she'd mentioned that was pretty common across all of the other points that were brought up.
I thought that the idea of having to sign a lot of waivers before you jump is showing a human need for it's the human way of saying, of being hypocrites and saying, well, we won't take responsibility for you, we won't take responsibility for your life, you're putting your life in our hands, but we won't take responsibility for it, and I can understand on a human level why this is done, and why I've piloted a small plane before, so I've been a student pilot, so I can understand why this is done, but at the same time, ascribing partners to God, if we do not ascribe partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will never let us down, is my belief. I mean, he is ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, always forgiving, always compassionate, always merciful. And that's something that I've been able to rely on in my life so many times when I've been in the deepest despair and the deepest levels of, just fraught with anxiety, mental confusion, you name it. And I think being in that kind of mental state is like being going back to what another sister said about being in a mental state, being like blown off to a far away place and carried off by birds. It's like losing hold of describing a divinity to something other than God is like as a deliberate act. It's like signing a waiver saying, okay, I deliberately renounce you. I deliberately renounce you, God. And and doing so willfully and being a hypocrite to oneself, um, lying to oneself about one's own abilities, which as a pilot, I understand, there's so many things that one has to check and double check. And among them is first and foremost God, because of the weather. I mean, I can be coming in for a landing, and if there's a storm front coming in and there's wind shear and there's a sudden downdraft, it can slam my plane into the ground. And people have died that way, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's will of God. So that's how the sister's experience spoke to me, and the other sister's experience with the mental experience of if I sign a waiver saying, okay, God, I refute you, then I would have nothing to hang on to, and the winds would carry me off and the birds would carry me off. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, to me, the idea of the waiver was interesting because you mentioned, we're not going to take accountability for the consequences of your action. And on the day of judgment, nobody is going to take accountability. It's got to be on us, regardless of, hey, this company told me I'd be okay, or hey, this whatever the idols are of today, right? And we're talking about divinity to God is not necessarily just believing in another God. There's a lot of things today that we fear more than God, and those are the idols of today. Let me go over to Janae. I think she was going to share something.
My name's Janae. I'm calling from New Jersey. I think something that stuck out to me when Samira was sharing her experience was this idea that you're doing something very dangerous. It's a daring feat. And you said also like it's way too fast and not graceful at all. And so to me, I thought of like you have the free will. Like you can choose to go through life without, like it's always our options and you can still make it through, but it's very dangerous and it's very fast and it's not graceful. So like that's how I thought of like you can go that way or you can, I don't know, hold on to something steady and keep you grounded. And so that's how I interpreted it.
In the thing, did anyone think about the idea of a parachute? To me, thinking through this idea, we're in this free fall, we're hurtling, and sometimes honestly, life feels that way. A few people mentioned, I don't know what words they use, but they described emotional and mental states sometimes just being when we're in that falling state. And I think, at least from videos I've seen, and Samira, you can tell us if this is how it feels, but when I see the parachute being pulled, it's kind of like a whoosh, and then that person gets kind of snapped back up. To me, it almost feels like, okay, grabbing on to the rope of Allah. Like all of a sudden it felt like this, and then something just came in and gathered us back up so we wouldn't be carried off. So that was one piece that came to mind, that it's not necessarily like, I don't know the verse is saying like don't jump, because there's going to be times where we are free falling. There's going to be times in life where we're heading down that thing. But even in that sense of, you can still get there. That parachute of Allah is always there.
Another parallel that I was thinking about in terms of just dropping, because I haven't done skydiving, is a roller coaster. The part that I don't like the most is the free fall feeling. But with that, like if I need to do it for our daughter, she's just 9, you know that it's going to come to an end. And then you know when it ends, what that's going to be like, and that it's way more comfortable. But the idea of the bird coming in and snatching you or something yanking, so whatever anticipation of it getting better, you don't even have that at the end of this free fall. So
You're
that
right.
is even more unnerving. And then just in terms of the whole liability disclosure on the skydiving, just the, I think some of the concept makes me think of you can outsource something except for like the work, but you can't outsource the responsibility. So you may get a call center, but you still are ultimately responsible for your spiritual well-being, your connectivity to God. So you can go ahead and try to attach that to another deity or a vice or whatever it may be. But when it really comes down to it, you're not getting out of your job to get yourself back home correctly.
I've never thought of it like that, ascribing other deities as outsourcing the work that we're doing, but it's so true.
I wanted to say that I feel that you take an action, but the result is in Allah's hand. You don't know where will you fall.
Yes, absolutely. You don't know where you're gonna end up. You should be ending up on that, whatever the open field is under the plane, but you don't know that that's gonna happen. Okay, Sonia, you can't get her microphone to work, but I was going to say that what stuck out to me is that it's a one-way only journey. Once you go down that path of ascribing divinity to others besides God, it's hard to turn back, and the journey may not be in your control anymore.
Yeah, the thought, just personally, I have been down that path of associating others with Allah, and I'm grateful to not have the wind, so to speak, to take me way off into where I was never able to come back to where I am. So I'm just great. I mean, I learned a lot during that path, I'll be honest. But I'm grateful to be where I should be. And safely have landed back here. I'll put it that way.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right, because Allah says you can never go too far. Allah is always there.
And kind of like skydiving, at times it was exhilarating and fun. It felt freeing at times, to be honest with you. Just grateful that I am where I am. I'll just put it that way.
Well, I think that's so important because, there was two things that Samira mentioned. She mentioned the fear, which we've talked about, but she also mentioned the exhilaration feeling.
Yep.
And I think that's so important to think about, that it's not the simplistic view that we have when we're little, that if we're doing something it shouldn't be, it's not going to feel good. And if we're doing the right thing, it's only going to feel good. Sometimes
exactly. Not the case. Right.
Fatima, you put in the chat, it's so counter to Sirat al-Mustaqim. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, just everybody's comments and just reading through what Samir was saying, right? There's no direction, right? I think it's just you're just free falling, you're going in random places, you don't have any control. Not to say that we have control over anything, but in any case, it was just very counter to what, the Islamic mantra is of following the straight path. So yeah, it just reminded me of that.
I'm also thinking of a conversation I had with someone yesterday who they were talking about how they were struggling a lot in their faith because of everything happening in Gaza. And they know that God doesn't give someone more than they can bear, but they were on the phone with someone who was just saying, I can't bear this anymore. And to them, they were struggling with that piece. And the connection I was making was that idea of, someone mentioned the idea of control, that it might feel like right now in that where I am in life or we are in life, we have control because we're not in the situation of being in war and famine and oppression and genocide. And this person I was talking to then said, but what keeps bringing me back as I'm struggling with my faith is that the people I'm talking to in Gaza haven't lost their faith. Despite being in that situation, Their faith is affirmed, and I can't figure it out. I don't know is what this person was saying. And so that connects to me this idea of the free fall and the idea of us being hurtling from the sky. Sometimes I wonder if that hurtling from the sky is what we think it is. Is it the worst case scenario where everything is completely outside of your control and it's and you know and death is imminent? Or are there times where it's also seemingly in a very comfortable place, but we're still spiritually free falling? So don't know where I was going with that, but it was a connection I made to sometimes I think we're in a place of hurtling to the ground, metaphorically, even though it does seem like things are in control. And there's other times when everything around you might feel out of control, and yet you're somehow on that parachute of Allah. So let's take this idea, and we started with the idea of there's things in the Quran that are written that we sometimes have access to schemas that help us make sense, and sometimes we don't have access. So number one is from chapter 4, verse 132, where God says that humankind can be made to disappear and replaced with other beings. What might that be referring to? What could we imagine? Because we don't know. You know, it doesn't say clearly what it is, but what might we imagine that could be referring to? And the exact verse from the Quran is, "And unto God belongs all that is in the heavens and all that is on earth, and none is as worthy of trust as God. If he so wills, if God so wills, he could cause you, O mankind, to disappear and bring forth other beings in your stead, for God has indeed the power to do this." So what might that be referring to? The second, chapter 21, verse 104. If we think this is a literal description of the day of judgment, what could the description of skies rolled up be describing? Okay. Or if it's metaphorical, if we believe it's metaphorical, what could it be describing? Or if we believe it's both. So the verse here is, "The supreme awesomeness of the day of judgment will cause them no grief, since the angels will receive them with the greeting, 'This is your day of triumph, the day which you were promised. On that day, we shall roll up the skies as written scrolls are rolled up. And as we brought into being the first creation, so we shall bring it forth anew, a promise which we have willed upon ourselves. For behold, we are able to do all things." So two verses, one about humankind being made to disappear and replaced with other beings, another with the idea of skies rolled up. So you can choose whichever one you would like to talk about.
I can kick us off. So our group, we chose the ayah about Allah's power in potentially replacing mankind and the importance of having trust in Allah. And our conversation was interesting. I think some of the big things were around the importance of context and understanding what was going on around the particular revelation, because reading our ayahs on face value kind of stokes some feelings of fear and apprehension and sense that it was a bit harsh in terms of tone. And that was a bit hard to read. And so that led us into thinking about, what do we know to be true about Allah? What do we know to be true about the scripture? And, that overarching idea of balance. And we're not going to get harsh commandments or, warnings or threats even without a reason that is valid and important. And so that led us to do a little bit of sleuthing around what was the historical context around 432 and 133. And apparently it was around commandments coming out about how you should treat women and orphans. And so, that does warrant maybe sterner language to make sure folks are acting justly and with integrity. And so that was just an important example around the importance of like having context and not taking single ayahs or two out of context, and how dangerous that can be, and how that can really kind of fan the flames of feeling like disconnected or alienated from the Quran and from Allah, and how that really came up a lot in our communities, that fear-based language without that sense of balance. So that was, I think, at the heart of our conversation.
Powerful exercise, and what a powerful statement. And you know, a lot of what we've talked about here in our times together has exactly that. How do you read above the verse and below the verse and understand the context so that it can't be weaponized against us? Because I would imagine that that verse could be weaponized against women quite a bit. So the fact that you're describing it was sent in reference to how you treat women, I think is such a powerful piece to know.
It is very powerful, but actually we didn't even, so we were tackling the same verse. We did not look at the context, but Aaron and Sonia did a good job at kind of describing what they were thinking. I mean, Sonia went full on AI on us. She was like, "Oh, well, AI is replacing jobs," and I thought that was really clever. My brain didn't even go, but it's so
Wow.
relevant. It's so relevant with what's happening today. So it was like a really great way of, and Aaron and Sonia, you guys can speak up, right? I'm just paraphrasing, but like I thought it was a really great way to showcase how, the verses in the Quran transcend time, and like there is relevance that can be found even with what's happening today in this specific verse. And and Aaron was bringing up, I'm trying to remember, like basically, actually, Aaron went to aliens, which I thought was very clever too. Like basically humanity being replaced by, otherworldly aliens or just other forms of beings that we are not accustomed to. So, I mean, it's definitely, the fear portion, as Khadija was saying, was discussed, right? That it is like there is a lot of like Allah's awesome and power is definitely reflected in the verse, and the fear portion, right? That if we don't abide to, what is being prescribed, well, this can happen. But then on the other, I was on the kind of like on the other lens, I was more reflecting on, Allah's mercy and rahmah towards communities, right? That we have all of these privileges. We are here because of Allah's mercy. And then I think the conversation devolved more around, well, the verse is also very humbling. It forces us to reassess our place in humanity. And and we were just kind of talking about, even in Buddhism, how humans are likened to lice, and just talking about different art, and then just kind of reflecting on Allah's different attributes and humanity's place, and forcing us to become humble and grateful for the privileges that we have. So I just quick summary, but I think Aaron and Sonia really, like, my mind was blown. I'm like, AI and aliens. I didn't even, like, my brain didn't even go there. So I thought that was a really great way of like interpreting the verse. So I'll stop there.
To think through, because a lot of times we see what's going on now with whether it be AI or whatever it is as divorced from what we're reading about in the Quran. So to make that connection now, and then to go into thinking about AI through this lens is brings a whole new level. And those of you who knew Hasna, she had very very strong feelings on AI and the potential for it to the what is it called, for us not to give ourselves in and let ourselves be completely taken over, but continue to make sure that we're thinking consciously, otherwise it would take over.
So we talked a little bit about, I'm not a great paraphraser, but just with the
Sophia, I'm gonna ask you to start again and not put yourself down.
Okay, all right. We discussed the first question, talking about God, and that God is all powerful, all knowing, and that we are here because of him. We can disappear if he so wills. So that's, let's see. And the second question, we talked about the finality, really about, if you imagine scrolls and they're being rolled up, that it gives you the image of everything just stopping. If anybody from my group wants to jump into, that's the main gist what we were talking about. We're also talking about Hassan and the curriculum and what a good job Nadia is doing. Spent a lot of time talking about you. Yeah, so thank you again for doing this every month for us.
As you talk about finality, and thank you for that. But as you talk about finality, it's true. We shall roll up the skies as written scrolls are rolled up. When a scroll is written, at the beginning, it's written with the intention that you'll get to the end of it, roll it up and send it. Like when a letter is written, when an email is written, it's written for the purpose of finishing and hitting send. And so it does get me thinking, when the skies were they created with the purpose of having a message, sharing that message, and then that's it, being sent out. I never thought about that before, so that's powerful. Giant alien spiders, is that what you're thinking about right now?
No. I think we mostly kind of tried to answer the first question. And we kind of went back in time to when there were no humans and it was like dinosaurs and and so that was kind of an example of us not existing. And then I was thinking about climate change and how the world may change and humanity may not exist anymore. Who knows? But we also had an interesting aside to how there are stories related in the Quran where whole peoples get wiped out, like Shu'ab's, clan and so the Quran says, we eradicated those people, but you have to realize that you cannot eradicate a whole people unless, there are going to be children in there. And so God is also taking out innocent people. And how do you reconcile yourself with God being merciful and doing that at the same time? Samir also had some interesting inputs on that.
Sure. I was just relaying something that I had heard before when it came to like certain verses where people were dismayed that God had allowed maybe a child or someone else that was innocent to perish. And the scholar was comforting the person by saying that death to us is not the same as death to like Allah, and basically ultimately like their spirits go on, and if they are received in like Jannah, like they do not have any problems anymore. And so it just it's a different perspective, I guess. So it can still, sometimes it's not the most reassuring, but as believers it is something to reaffirm that the end of a physical life is not like the end of a spirit.
I know somewhere in the curriculum, and I don't remember where, Hasna talks about verses that sit with us for a bit and make us feel troubled and make us feel how does this make sense? And in that she reminds us what God says, and that is that as we're going through, um similar to this idea of a person in free fall, and how could that person be how could that happen, that when we are faced with something like that we do turn to God and we say, and we don't try to put it away, we don't try to say like I'm not going to think about it, or try to say, you know, or just close our minds off, but turn to God and say, hey, God, I'm really struggling with this, but I'm turning to you because I know it's come from you, and I know that it's something good. So help me understand. And that's our work. That is, as we find something, that we turn to God, and then hopefully God guides us from there. But it reminded me, Mayeen, when you were sharing about what your group was talking about, that I think it's important that when we get to places that in the Quran that make us feel certain ways, or think certain things, that we go through that exercise.
We discussed the second verse, and we thought that God wants us to imagine the scenario, what will happen on the judgment day. And it was my opinion that when I think of that, I feel the fear of it. And someone in our group also said that it was all an illusion if we think of it.
Mhm. Mm. It's such an interesting that'll feel like an illusion. And then it reminds me of the verse in the Quran where it says it feels like we were just there for a day or part of a day, even though
Mm.
all this time we spent. Gwen, you had unmuted.
Yes, and the sister made the important point that it reminds us to be kind and good to one another and to follow the commandments, you know.
Mm.
And also that it's an illusion, and it's also an illusion to think that you know, we discussed the first verse a little bit too, that we're the only creatures on this planet, and that maybe God bringing other beings in our stead. I mean, maybe the day isn't like a single, everyone just assumes in the three monotheistic religions it's a single day, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's like different days, and those other creatures will continue on some earth somewhere, you know. And that was something else that was great. Somebody else please jump in.
The more I read and the more I talk and I have all the and listen to people, and I think this is why it's so important that we are practicing sharing our voice and our opinion and our perspective. You know, because this idea of one type of people being here and then another type of person. I've been reading a lot of articles lately on uh on early humans uh and how, you know, there's a lot of talk in religious circles about, oh, evolution or no evolution, and did we come from this, did we not come from this? But it actually, from what I'm reading in the scientific research, there was many different iterations of different types of creatures that came together, didn't come together. It wasn't just one and then another and then another. So, you know, like I said, the more I read, I feel like the more open my mind and my heart gets to, there are so many possibilities out there. We just don't know. And if we close our mind to everything, we're limiting what based on our particular knowledge. I want to go back to something someone mentioned is with the skies rolled up comment, and that idea of that the feeling there was fear. And I'm just going to connect it to earlier when we said that free fall, we have the fear and the exhilaration. And it's so interesting to me because as I read this verse, I'm going to read it one more time. It's describing a scenario without fear. So it says the supreme awesomeness of the day of resurrection will cause them no grief, since the angels will receive them with the greeting, "This is your day, the day you were promised. On that day we shall roll up the skies as written scrolls are rolled up. And as we brought into being the first creation, so shall we bring it forth anew, a promise with which we have willed upon ourselves, because behold, we're able to do all things." And it's interesting to me because when I first think about skies being rolled up and the a lot of times in the Quran, the Day of Judgment is described as a very scary phenomenon. But in this particular verse, they're not talking about a scary phenomenon. They're talking about a time where there's no grief. They're being received saying, "This is your day. Everything you've worked for, this is it." And so then I'm thinking about skies being rolled up like scrolls are rolled up. And I'm thinking about, you know, people who are receiving the books in their right hands and they have nothing to fear. And I think about this huge phenomenon of the sky being rolled, being there on the Day of Judgment, seeing something that feels like the sky being rolled up and being able to experience that without fear. And what would that be like? Being able to experience that saying, it's time to meet my maker now, or being able to experience death with that. And it's such a different way than I'm used to thinking. So I'm going to end today with a personal activity for you. So we're not going to discuss this one. But I am going to have you just write for yourself. Again, whether you like to write with paper pencil, whether you like to type it on the computer. I'm gonna tell you that in Slack, I know we haven't opened up Slack for September yet. We will very soon, as soon as I get those questions over to Zaha. Thank you for your patience, Zaha. But if you are behind in months before on Slack, and if you are, you're not alone. I think it's most of us, so don't worry. But if you are, I encourage you, the writing you do for this, go in and put it in Slack, because in Slack, there's always a question of an open-ended. I don't remember what the exact question. It's something along the lines of what verse was most meaningful to you and why. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes just to write and reflect on this piece. And if you need to go back and put a Slack in, go in and put it in Slack. So it talks about the verse from chapter 21, verse 101 and 102. God promises that those who are destined for heaven will receive all that their souls ever desired forever. The question then is, what does your soul desire? And I don't know if I spend a lot of time thinking about that. I think a lot about what I should do or what I shouldn't do, and very busy and doing all the things I should, but really asking myself, what does my soul want? What do I desire? So what does your soul desire? Knowing that there are absolutely no limits, not even on the concept of time itself. Allow yourself to imagine freely what you would like your heavenly experience to look, feel, taste, smell, and sound like, inshallah. Dream big. Who are the people you'd like to meet? And remember, I told you at the beginning, I would come back to the idea of who would you like to meet? What activities would you like to do that are otherwise impossible in this temporary life, like flying, for example? What questions would you like answered? And what emotions would you like to feel? So we only have 2 minutes together, but we're going to start with 2 minutes of just silent writing to this. And then at 6:30, I'm going to ask Dr. Nadia to close us out with a dua, and you can finish up your reflection and put it into Slack. So I'm going to stop talking and give us 2 minutes. What does your soul desire? You can answer any of these particular questions or others. Go ahead and start. I hate to jump in and interrupt, but continue your reflections since it is 6:30. I'm going to ask that if you could put a sentence from your reflection in the chat. I think this would be a powerful way for us to end today. And Dr. Nayalia, I will turn it over to you to close us out.
Oh, thank you. Once again, another amazing discussion. I am just so honored to be a part of this community and to be in community with you all. You are doing a wonderful job. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep reading. Keep trying to, if you're behind, just keep working at it. It's going to all pay off in the end. I do want to read something from page 1. I think it's this month, coming up, month 9 curriculum, that says something about the focus for the month coming up. And one of the things is to ask yourself what you're willing to let go of for the sake of God and for the freedom that is waiting on the other side of living true faith in action, word, and deed. I think that really speaks to a lot of what you all have discussed in the discussion today, and I just wanted to leave you with that. So inshallah, we'll see you for discussion number 9 on October 5th. So look for email and reminders and all of the information you'll need for that. So that'll be all for today. Assalamu alaikum.